He was just a single father, working tirelessly in a dusty auto garage, clinging to routine and the echo of a life he once had. Then, one quiet afternoon, a stranger walked in, speaking fluent French, and in that fleeting, unexpected moment, everything began to change. What Luke didn't know was that someone else had been listening, quietly, intently. Before we delve into this moving story of compassion, redemption, and finding purpose again, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, because the next story may very well change how you see the world. Let's begin. The Colorado sky was smeared in pale ash and silver as Luke Mitchell unlocked the old gate of Crawford Auto Lot. The chill in the morning air clung stubbornly to his skin, whispering reminders of winter's reluctance to release its grip. Gravel crunched beneath his worn work boots with the same rhythm he'd followed for years now. His hands, weathered and rough, once held pens and chalk, once crafted lessons in classrooms filled with young minds. Now they were accustomed to wrenches and oil rags. Yet, that morning, they trembled slightly as he reached for the office keys. The scent of motor oil, old rubber, and gasoline saturated the air like a second skin, oddly comforting in its consistency. Predictable. Honest. Unlike the chaos of the life he had left behind. There were 3 oil changes booked that morning, 1 engine diagnostic, and absolutely no promise of anything new. Until he saw the car. It was an anomaly, a sleek, polished Peugeot 504, parked near the fence like a relic of another world. Dust clung to the chrome, but the car's body was pristine. Too pristine for this neighborhood. This wasn't just a vehicle. It was a whisper of heritage, a ghost of European craftsmanship. Next to it stood a woman. Her tan trench coat was cinched neatly at the waist, her dark hair twisted back in a low knot. Sunglasses shielded her gaze, yet her posture and subtle turns of the head revealed a practiced attentiveness. She was observing, calculating, but it wasn't her that truly captured Luke's focus. It was the man inside the office. Tall, a little disoriented, visibly lost in a sea of unfamiliar paperwork. His accent unmistakably French. He muttered something to Tyler, a high school intern who looked both overwhelmed and uninterested. "I don't know what you're saying, man. Like, Google Translate." Tyler stammered. Luke entered, wiping his hands on a rag, and without pause spoke. Fluent French, calm and fluid, poured from him as if he'd been waiting for this moment. The Frenchman looked up, startled, then smiled. Luke brushed off the praise, claiming rusty memory. But in truth, French had once been his world, before grief, before widowhood, before he exchanged poetry for spark plugs. He helped the man, Henri, navigate the logistics of purchasing his first car in a new country, explain mileage, reliability, and what maintenance costs to expect. For 10 uninterrupted minutes, Luke returned to a version of himself he hadn't seen in years. Henri, a retired teacher moving to the U.S. to be closer to his grandchildren, expressed heartfelt gratitude. "You are a kind man," he said slowly in English. Luke only nodded. Most haven't been lost in a strange place with no one willing to listen. What he didn't realize was that the woman by the Peugeot had moved closer, close enough to hear every word. When Henri left to finalize the paperwork, Luke turned and met her eyes. She had removed her sunglasses. Her gaze was sharp but not harsh. Instead, it was filled with something else, recognition. "That was beautiful," she said. He blinked. "The way you spoke French," she continued. "I used to teach it," he replied cautiously. "A long time ago." "Most people forget what they don't use," she said. "You didn't." He didn't quite know how to respond to that. Her voice carried the weight of more than just admiration. It felt like understanding. "I'm Isabel," she offered, extending her hand. "Look." He shook it. Her grip was assured. She gestured to the Peugeot. "It was my father's. Thought it was finally time to have it looked at." "You drove that here?" She smiled faintly. "It's not exactly casual." Neither was he. Luke approached the car, fingers brushing along the frame. "French engine like this, rare now. Most people wouldn't know how to handle it." "But you do?" she asked. "I can try. I've fixed worse. Should I wait?" "You want to wait?" he asked, mildly surprised. She nodded. He gestured to the bay. I'll pull it in. As he opened the garage, guiding the car inside, a bicycle rolled up. His daughter Emma, a vibrant 9-year-old with an oversized backpack, greeted him. Hi, Dad. Stay clear of the tools, Peanut, he called. She rolled her eyes, the way only a child who's heard it 100 times could. Isabel watched them, something softening in her expression. She's sharp, she said. Reads better than I did at her age. She's smarter than me, too, Luke replied, crouching beneath the car. Then, Isabel said something quieter, almost like a breath. Do you miss it? Teaching. He paused. Her question hit deeper than expected. Slowly, he stood and wiped his hands. Every single day. She didn't press, just nodded. Some things, she said, are worth remembering. And in that shared silence, the air felt different. The garage no longer felt like just a workspace. It was a threshold between what was lost and what could still be reclaimed. As Luke worked, Isabel walked around the garage. It wasn't glamorous. Rusted license plates on the wall, a slow-ticking clock, faded coupons pinned on a corkboard. But there was life in every detail. Intentionality. Grit. You've kept this place alive, she said. I rent it, he replied. Owner was going to level it. I asked for a chance to make it useful. She knelt beside the Peugeot, unbothered by the dirty floor. You do that often, don't you? Fix things before they're thrown away. He chuckled. You'd be surprised how many things in life get tossed before they're even broken. Emma was drawing on the pavement nearby. Isabel approached. What are you working on? A picture of the car, Emma replied. I've never seen one like it. It's elegant, Isabel offered. Did your dad love it? Emma asked. He was a mechanic, Isabel said. Back in France. Emma lit up. Like my dad. Isabel smiled. When I was your age, I thought that car was magic. Not for how fast it went, but because my father would talk to me like I mattered when we were in it. Did he teach you to fix cars too? I listened, she replied. That was enough. Luke chimed in. She's right. Listening matters. Most people just wait for their turn to speak. Isabel looked at him. Were you always a mechanic? No, he admitted. I was a high school teacher. French and literature. So you really do speak it beautifully, she said. He shrugged. Not much demand for Rambo in a garage. Beauty hides in unexpected places, she replied. There was a pause. Then she asked, Why did you stop? Luke stared at her, then simply said, My wife got sick. I had to be home more. Then she passed. I couldn't go back. Too many empty chairs. Emma didn't look up. She already knew. I'm sorry, Isabel said. Yeah, grief changes everything. Then it changes you. There was another pause. Would you consider working on another car? She asked carefully. What do you have in mind? An old Citroën DS, she said. Also my father's. It deserves someone who respects it. You're not from around here, are you? He asked. She smiled, enigmatic. No, just passing through. What she didn't say. She was Isabel Morrow, CEO of Fontaine Motors, a billion-dollar auto empire. She hadn't come to fix a car. She came to fix herself. Luke handed her a slip of paper. A few days to do it right. Peugeot parts don't sit on store shelves. I can wait. You want to wait? I do, she said. Sometimes the waiting is the best part. From the pavement, Emma chimed in. You listen like my dad. Like the words matter. Luke met Isabel's gaze. Something had shifted. Her eyes weren't filled with power or pretense. They held something raw, quiet human. I'll see what I can do, Luke said. Merci, Luke, she whispered, her French accent soft, deliberate. And as she turned to go, Luke wondered why a woman who walked like Paris and held the air of Wall Street would sit and wait in his garage. He didn't have the answer yet, but neither did she. All they knew was that, for the first time in a long while, something felt worth waiting for. That evening, the storm rolled in from the mountains, slow and heavy like a brooding animal. By dusk, the sky had turned the color of a fading bruise, and flashes of lightning danced silently across the horizon. Just as Luke bolted the garage door shut, the first cold raindrops fell, fat, urgent splashes that transformed gravel into sludge and slicked the concrete underfoot. He was halfway to his truck when headlights sliced through the darkness. A car. The car. The Peugeot. It groaned as it pulled up, windshield wipers flailing with desperate rhythm. The engine sputtered once, coughed like an old smoker, then fell silent. Luke blinked. Was that Isabel? He ran toward the car, just as she stepped out, drenched within seconds. She clutched the steering wheel one moment, an unopened umbrella the next. "Are you out of your mind?" he shouted over the wind. She laughed, a short, breathless laugh. "Apparently." "Come on," he said, opening the passenger door. "Before you catch pneumonia." Inside, the storm howled overhead. Rain thundered on the roof, shaking the beams. Isabel stood near the entrance, soaked to the bone, sweater clinging to her like second skin. "The brakes gave out halfway down the ridge," she said. Then the lights started flickering. "I thought I could make it." Luke handed her a towel. "You shouldn't be driving this yet. It's not ready." She nodded silently, drying her face with slow, deliberate movements. "I didn't know where else to go," she added quietly. The words hung between them, heavy with vulnerability. Luke looked at her, really looked. Her usually composed eyes now shimmered, not from rain, but from something older, something raw. He fetched 2 folding chairs and gestured. "Come sit. You look like you're carrying something heavier than a busted brake line." They sat beneath the soft glow of a single hanging bulb, storm raging outside. The garage smelled of oil, soaked concrete, and jasmine. "I'm not from around here," she began. "I figured. I grew up in Paris. My father was a mechanic, an immigrant from Marseille. He taught me about cars before he taught me about people. Said machines were easier to understand." Luke smiled faintly. "Smart man. He passed away when I was 19. Heart failure." "I'm sorry." She nodded. "He left me the Peugeot. I didn't drive it for 10 years. Couldn't. One day, I realized I couldn't remember the sound of his voice, only the hum of that engine. So I started again." She hesitated, then added, "I work for the company he once admired, Fontaine Motors." Luke froze. "I didn't come here by accident," she continued. "I came because I needed to see if anyone still thinks the way he did. If anyone still believes machines should serve people, not just profits." "That's why you brought the Peugeot here." "No," she said softly. "I brought it here because my father believed in fixing things. I stayed because you do too." They sat in stillness. Then she added, her voice trembling, "I read your proposal." Luke went rigid. "Your daughter sent it to me." He exhaled. "Of course she did. I thought she was just a curious kid. Then I saw your name. I checked the archive. Your proposal was dismissed with a generic reply." She looked him in the eye. "I signed it." He turned to her slowly, stunned. "You what?" "I didn't read it then. I read it yesterday. And I cried. Because your design wasn't just smart, it was kind. You wanted to build something that helped people live better." "It wasn't enough," he whispered. "It was," she replied. "The system wasn't. But that can change." The storm punctuated her words with thunder. "I don't want to lead a company that forgets people like you exist. I need your help." Luke stared, overwhelmed. "You're serious?" "I am. I don't want a polished resume. I want someone who still believes, someone who remembers what my father taught me, that machines, like people, only work when you take the time to understand them." Something stirred deep inside Luke, a part of him he had long buried. He smiled. "You know this is crazy, right?" She smiled back, eyes misty. "So is driving a Peugeot in a thunderstorm to find a stranger with oil-stained hands and answers in his heart." They didn't move. The storm softened to a whisper. Outside, the clouds finally began to part, moonlight breaking through like hope. And inside, 2 people, each carrying the weight of old wounds, finally began to breathe again. Something within Luke quietly unlocked, not with force, but with the grace of being truly seen. The storm had passed. By the time morning arrived, a golden shaft of sunlight spilled through the garage windows, warming the concrete floor and casting long shadows over Luke's cluttered workbench. Yet despite the light, the air held a stillness, as though the day itself were holding its breath, waiting to see if he'd move. Sleep had mostly eluded him. Not after Isabel's unexpected visit. Not after watching her disappear into the rainy night, eyes brimming with something he couldn't quite name. Conviction, yes, but something more dangerous, something far closer to hope. Now he stood alone in the quiet, a half-empty mug of coffee gone cold in his calloused hands, staring down at the blueprint spread across his bench. It was the same one he had buried 5 years ago, folding it with trembling hands and telling himself to forget. Not because he didn't believe in the idea, it was his after all, but because he'd convinced himself no one else ever would, and somehow that it felt safer. Easier to abandon the dream than face it falling apart again. Behind him, Emma was perched on a high stool, her small feet swinging as she hummed a tune softly under her breath. A box of crayons lay open beside her, and she was carefully shading in a sketch of a Citroën DS, the car Isabel had once mentioned. She looked up with a proud grin. "I named her Lumi," she announced. Luke raised an eyebrow, curious. "Lumi? Short for Lumiere," she explained, beaming. "It means light, right?" He nodded, a reluctant smile tugging at his lips. "Good memory. I think she's fast," Emma added seriously, holding up the drawing like it were a blueprint of her own. "But she's kind too. Like she could win any race, but she'd stop if someone got hurt." Something caught in Luke's chest, small, sharp, and unexpected. Emma's words, Isabel's offer, the blueprint. It was all coming back to him now, colliding in a place he'd kept guarded for too long. Isabel hadn't just wanted the design. She'd wanted him, his insight, his touch, his belief. But that wasn't his world anymore. He wasn't made for spotlights or show floors. He was a man of grease-streaked hands and socket wrenches, of brake lines and school runs. He kept his world small because that's what made it safe. Contained. Later that day, the familiar sound of tires crunching over gravel stirred something in his chest. There was no mistaking the elegant hum of French engineering. Still, he didn't look up until he heard her voice. "I didn't want to assume you'd call." Isabel stood framed in the doorway of his garage. She wore jeans and a navy blazer, but not the armor of a CEO. Today she looked different, softer, uncertain, quietly hopeful. She didn't come with contracts or cameras. She came like someone offering something, and risking even more. Luke set down the carburetor he'd been cleaning, and wiped his hands on a rag. "I've been thinking," he said finally, "and I can't do it." She didn't flinch, but something in her eyes dimmed just slightly, like the last flicker of a candle, because of what happened before. "No," Luke replied gently, "because of what would happen now." He stepped around the bench, heart heavy. "I get what you're trying to do. I do. But that's not my world anymore. I don't wear suits. I don't give speeches. I fix engines. I get my daughter to school on time. I live in the real world. And in that world, I can't afford to chase a dream again and come up short. Not when Emma's watching." Isabel was silent for a long moment. Only the ticking of the old wall clock echoed through the garage. "You wouldn't be chasing anything," she said at last. "You'd be leading." "I'm no leader," he muttered, barely above a whisper. "I'm a mechanic." She took a step closer. "Then let me tell you something only a mechanic would understand. Even the smallest part in an engine, tiny, quiet, forgotten, can change everything. It doesn't have to be loud. It just has to work." He stared at her, unsure whether to be moved or terrified by how deeply she saw him. "I'm not asking you to sell yourself," she added. "Just stand beside what you already built and let people see it." He shook his head slowly. "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because what if I let them see it?" he said, voice cracking. "And it still doesn't matter?" That hit something raw. Isabel didn't answer with a pitch or data or a PR strategy. She said only this: "Then I'll be the one standing next to you when it doesn't." Those words struck deeper than any corporate rejection ever could. But before he could speak, another voice echoed from the doorway. "Dad." Emma stood, clutching her drawing of Lumiere, her cheeks flushed with determination. "You have to go." Luke blinked. "Emma." "No," she insisted, stepping forward. "You have to show them your design. You always tell me to try, even when I'm scared, even when I think it won't work." She held out her drawing, like it was a torch passed down a lineage of dreamers. "You told me we're not what we lose, we're what we build. So go build something." Luke looked down. The lines of the drawing were crooked, the colors uneven, but it radiated something bigger than perfection. It was hope, pure and bold in crayon form. He knelt down, overcome. "You really think I can do this?" Emma nodded fiercely. "I know you can." He didn't look at Isabel. He didn't need to. The shimmer in her eyes said everything. This was why she had come. Not just for a design or a deal, but to see a man find his voice again. Luke stood up, breath slow and sure. "I'll need a clean shirt." Isabel grinned. "We'll find you one. And maybe a haircut." She smiled wider. "Definitely." "I'll go," he said, eyes forward now. "But not because I want to be someone else." "Good," Isabel whispered. "Because I didn't fall for someone else." There it was. The truth, unplanned, irreversible. Luke's eyes widened, but neither Isabel nor Emma flinched. And for the first time in years, Luke Mitchell didn't step back from the unknown. He stepped into it. The Fontaine Motors Tech Expo was held in a refurbished train depot downtown, an architectural marvel of vaulted steel and streaming skylights. The energy inside buzzed with anticipation. Executives in tailored suits, engineers buzzing near sleek prototypes, PR assistants darting like dragonflies. Luke lingered just outside the glass doors, adjusting the crisp collar of a shirt Isabel had picked for him that morning. His boots were freshly polished, but unmistakably his. He'd insisted on wearing something that still felt like him. His palms were damp with nerves. Beside him, Emma tugged at his lapels with movie-like precision. "You look like someone who knows things," she said. "I am someone who knows things," he replied with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Isabel joined them, emerging from the shadows. She was once again every inch the CEO, charcoal gray suit, sleek hair, elegance wrapped in resolve. But her expression softened when she looked at Luke. "They're ready," she said quietly. "I'm not." "Doesn't matter. Come anyway." Inside, as they approached the stage, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Isabel Morrow, absent for months, had returned, not with shareholders or executives, but with a mechanic and his daughter. A young assistant scurried to Isabel's side. "Should we list Mr. Mitchell's credentials?" She shook her head. "No, he'll speak for himself." Luke turned to Emma. "You okay?" She flashed him a thumbs up. "I got this. You're not the one going on stage. Still got this." His throat tightened. Together, they stepped into the light. Isabel took the microphone first. "Thank you for being here," she began. "You came expecting engineers, designers, analysts. But today, I want you to hear from someone who, until last week, didn't even own a suit jacket." A soft ripple of laughter. She looked at Luke. "But he does own something better. An idea, a vision, and something we need more than ever, heart." She turned and handed him the microphone. Luke stepped up. Silence settled like fog. "My name is Luke Mitchell," he began. "I used to be a teacher. Now I'm a single dad. I've worked out of a garage behind a used car lot for the past 4 years." He paused. "I'm standing here because 5 years ago, I mailed a blueprint to this company, and they rejected it." The crowd stirred. "I wasn't surprised," he went on, "because people like me, folks from backlots and busted engines, we don't get calls back from places like this." But that blueprint wasn't just about an engine. It was about access, about building a car that everyday people could afford, a car that kept them safe, a car that meant something. He turned to Isabel. "And someone in this room didn't just say we need this. She meant it." He looked out over the sea of strangers. "I didn't come here to sell. I came because I believe machines should serve people, not the other way around. Applause. First hesitant, then surging. Isabel returned to the mic. That man is the mind behind what we're calling Project Lumiere. Behind her, Luke's blueprint appeared, annotated, enhanced, reimagined. A sleek, fuel-efficient design. Modular parts. Sustainable materials. Accessible. Elegant. Real. A hand raised. Who signed the original rejection? Silence fell. Luke turned to Isabel. He already knew. She stepped forward. I did. Gasps. Murmurs. I signed it without reading it, she admitted. Because I trusted a system that favors speed over substance. I failed. She paused. And I won't do it again. Applause again, louder this time. Belief rising like a tide. That evening, under a softening Denver skyline, the three of them stood on the rooftop of the venue, watching lights flicker to life below. Emma leaned on the railing, her badge still proudly around her neck. That went better than expected, Luke said. Isabel smiled. It went exactly how it should, truthfully. He turned to her. You didn't have to admit it was you. I did, she said, because trust isn't built by being clever. It's built by being honest. Luke was quiet. What now? He asked. She turned fully to face him. Now, she said, we build something better. And for the first time in a long time, Luke didn't just see the road behind him. He saw the one ahead. And this time, he walked toward it. In the quiet hush before dawn, Luke Mitchell stirred awake. The world still cloaked in darkness. The house was enveloped in a profound stillness, not merely silent, but laden with meaning. Down the hall, his daughter Emma slept peacefully, her sketchbook resting on the floor, glasses askew on the nightstand. The gentle hum of the refrigerator was the only sound, save for Luke's steady breathing as he stood in the kitchen, eyes fixed on the blueprint spread before him. This blueprint, once a symbol of rejection and regret, now emanated hope. His fingers traced the corner where Emma had attached a sticky note, her handwriting still visible. My dad made this. Please read it with your heart. The faith in her words, the belief that someone would see beyond profit, struck a chord deep within him. Across town, Isabel sat in her glass-walled office, sunlight streaming in, reflecting off chrome edges. She reviewed investor reactions to Project Lumiere, but her focus was on a replay of Luke on stage, his voice steady, eyes wide, heart open. Emma smiled in the front row, and Isabel stood beside them, not as an executive, but as a woman revealing her true self. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Her assistant, Margot, peeked in, informing her that the board was ready for the 10 a.m. call. Give me 5, Isabel replied, closing the door. Margot hesitated, then added, For what it's worth, Isabel, that was the best thing this company has done in years. Isabel offered a soft smile. Thank you. She turned to the folder on her desk, the original creed Emma had brought. It still smelled faintly of oil and pencil graphite. Opening it once more, she whispered, Let's see if the world is finally ready. That evening, Luke returned to his garage to find a crate awaiting him. No return address. Curious, he pried it open to discover custom-machined, lightweight, high-efficiency components. Engine prototypes enhanced from his design. Tucked inside was a note. Phase 1 is ready. Let's build it together. He exhaled slowly, brushing his thumb across the metal. It was real now, not just an idea or blueprint, but steel and vision. Emma approached on her bike, eyes lighting up as she peered into the crate. It's yours, isn't it? She asked. Luke nodded. Ours. She grinned. So, are you going to name it Lumi? He chuckled. I think that name's taken. Days later, Luke and Isabel stood side by side in a modest lab off Fontaine's Denver campus. Gone were the polished marble floors and LED panels. This room smelled of coffee, sawdust, and spark. A place for creation, not marketing. Luke rolled up his sleeves. Isabel wore her hair loose. No blazer or heels. A team of young engineers watched with curiosity and respect as he unpacked the components. Isabel introduced him without pretense. This is Luke Mitchell. You've read his designs. Now he's here to help us build them. Later, over lunch, Luke sat beside Karina, a young engineer who had worked at Fontaine for 2 years. Flipping through his blueprint, she made notes, asking about torque ratios. "This part here," she said, tapping a corner of the schematic, "was the first time I felt like someone actually considered the mechanic who has to fix the car later. You didn't just think about how to build it. You thought about how to keep it alive." Luke blinked, moved. "No one's ever said that before." She smiled. "That's because no one's ever done it like this before." That night, Isabel and Luke returned to the garage where it all began. Emma was already inside, hanging fairy lights she'd found in a thrift store bin. "Ambience," she declared. Luke leaned against the doorframe. "Is that a thing now?" Emma smirked. "It is if you want people to take your engine seriously." Inside, the PGO gleamed beneath the soft lights, restored and whole, a tribute not just to a man's legacy, but to what happens when stories are kept alive rather than shut away in drawers. Isabel ran her hand along the hood. "My father would have loved this." Luke looked at her, quieter now. "Do you think he'd be proud?" She met his gaze. "Of you? Absolutely." A beat passed, then Isabel said more softly, "Of me." Luke didn't answer with words. He just took her hand. In that quiet, flickering garage, surrounded by fairy lights, old steel, and new dreams, two people who had spent too long chasing purpose finally stood still in it. Outside, the night settled warm and easy, and beneath that humble roof, something extraordinary was taking root. Not just an engine, but a life reimagined. The late spring sky stretched wide over Colorado, painted with long strokes of indigo and deep gold. Evening had settled in slow and soft, and the lights of Fontaine Motors' pilot workshop blinked on like cautious stars. Inside, Luke stood by the test bench, staring at the prototype engine as if it were breathing. It wasn't just steel and circuitry anymore. It was his, built from the design he once buried, assembled by a team that listened, and now fully functional, ready for the first road test tomorrow. He should have been proud, felt invincible, but all he could feel was something unfinished. The blueprint had been seen, the engine had come alive, but Luke hadn't gone home, not really. The garage behind Crawford Auto lot had sat empty for 2 days now, dust beginning to settle again where Emma's crayons once rolled, and the old wall clock ticked, just slightly off time, as if waiting. Isabel knew it was foolish to come back this late, but she did. She parked her car quietly. No PGO this time. Just a rental forgettable. She walked to the side door of the garage, her heels clicking against the cracked concrete. It wasn't locked. Inside, it smelled like oil and memory, and in the corner, almost as if he'd never left, stood Luke, backlit by the glow of an overhead lamp, sleeves rolled, arms crossed. The engine sat in front of him, but he wasn't looking at it. He was looking at the photo taped to the side of his toolbox, a picture of Emma, maybe 7 years old, holding a tiny wrench and beaming. Isabel didn't say anything. She didn't need to. He turned slowly, as if he'd been expecting her. Maybe he had. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "I should be asking you that," she replied, stepping in. He nodded toward the engine. It didn't sound right at high RPM. Nothing major, just needed space to think it through. She crossed her arms, mirroring him. "So you drove 2 hours to stand in the past." He smirked faintly. The past is the only place quiet enough to think. She moved closer. "And what did you think about?" He hesitated then, whether I belong where I'm going or if I just got lucky stumbling in. Isabel exhaled. "You didn't stumble, Luke. You walked in. You just didn't realize the ground was yours to begin with." He leaned against the wall, arms hanging loose now. "Everyone at Fontaine respects me, but that kind of respect, it's fragile. One mistake, one slip, and I become the mechanic experiment again." "You're more than that." "I know that," he said quickly, then softer. "But knowing doesn't always silence the echo of being underestimated." Isabel stepped closer, her voice steady. "Then let me say it again, louder than that echo. You do belong, not because you've earned it, not because you fixed a car or delivered a speech, but because you never stopped building, even when no one watched. Luke looked down, silent. She added, "And Emma, she sees it. She doesn't admire you because you're on a stage. She admires you because you didn't let disappointment end your story." He met her eyes. "And you? What do you see?" She didn't blink. "I see the man who reminded me why my father. There was a time when he believed it would never matter, that no one would care. But there it was, etched with elegant precision across the tail of the car Lumiere. The very name his daughter Emma had scrawled in crayon years ago. The name the entire board had later approved without hesitation. It meant light in French, but more than that, it had become the beating heart of Luke Mitchell's greatest creation, a beacon of everything his journey had come to symbolize. Technicians fine-tuned last-minute adjustments. Cameras rolled. Journalists scribbled into notepads, preparing for the official press release that would go out later. But this moment, this wasn't for headlines. This was sacred. A culmination. A homecoming. Emma came bounding toward him, her oversized Fontaine windbreaker flapping like wings, pigtails dancing. "You're driving it, right?" Luke chuckled. "I wasn't planning on it." "You have to," she said, voice urgent and bright. "You built it." He raised a brow. "We built it." Her grin deepened as she unzipped her backpack and produced a small, carefully folded piece of paper. "Here," she said, placing it in his hand. "What is it?" "The last page of your blueprint. You never finished it, so I did." He unfolded the paper. In neat, blocky handwriting were the words, "Final note. This design isn't for profit, but for people. For the moms working double shifts. For the dads teaching daughters to drive. For the families needing a fresh start. This engine is for them. And for my dad, who never stopped building, even when nobody believed." Emma Mitchell, age 9 3/4. Something caught in Luke's chest. He closed his eyes, breathing in her words like they were oxygen. We opened them again. Isabel was walking toward him. Gone was the usual corporate armor. She wore jeans and a leather jacket. She looked more like herself than ever. "You ready?" she asked. "I don't think I've ever been," Luke replied. "But I'm here. That counts for something." The PR coordinator called out, "Test run in 3 minutes." Luke turned to Isabel. "You're really letting me drive it first?" "Of course," she said, her tone soft but unwavering. "It was born from your hands." He scanned the modest crowd. Engineers, executives, interns, all of them now standing with him, not behind him. Not a single doubter remained. Not after the vision, not after the build, and especially not after watching him lead with something rare, empathy. He opened the door and slid into the driver's seat. The interior felt exactly right, ergonomic, inclusive, real. This was not a car for showrooms. This was for real lives and real roads. He gently tucked Emma's paper into the glove box like a promise sealed in steel. Then, with a deep breath, he turned the key. The engine ignited, smooth, strong, alive. Cheers erupted as the sound rolled across the track. Through the windshield, he met Isabel's eyes. She gave a small nod. "Go." The car glided forward with grace. It belonged there. At 40 miles per hour, it felt solid. At 60, it was steady, as if carried on air. At 75, it soared. Luke's eyes welled with tears, not from speed, but from what it meant to move again, to chase a purpose. This wasn't just metal and mechanics. It was a vessel of hope, of belief. When he completed the lap and brought Lumiere to a halt, the crowd erupted into applause. Emma rushed toward him. He didn't even wait to exit the car before scooping her into a hug. "You went so fast," she shouted. "I think," he said, voice thick with emotion, "I broke the speed of doubt." Isabel approached, clipboard forgotten, eyes shining. "You look like you belong there." "I did," he said, "and so does she." He nodded toward the car. "She's ready." Isabel smiled. "Then so are we." Luke took it all in. The people, the car, the light catching on chrome and possibility. Then he turned to her. "You didn't just help me build this. You rebuilt me." Her gaze softened. "You did that yourself." I just reminded you where the switch was. The wind stirred. The sun broke fully across the track, gilding everything in morning gold. Emma leaned against the car, arms folded with pride. Can I tell people I helped design it? Luke nodded solemnly. You named it. That's the most important part. And in that moment, surrounded by steel, sun, and shared purpose, the three of them stood not as CEO, mechanic, or child, but as architects of something far more enduring than an engine. They had built a future lit not just by headlights, but by heartlight. Lumiere was not just a car. It was proof that even the quietest dream, when nurtured, can become the very thing that moves the world. 3 months later, a ribbon fluttered in the gentle Colorado breeze, stretched across the doors of a freshly painted workshop just outside Buena Vista. No cameras, no reporters, just a beginning. For Luke Mitchell, it was the most important place he had ever opened a door to. The building had once been a forgotten tractor repair shop. The roof still bore scars from a 2009 hailstorm, and the side wall carried ghost paint from a long-vanished logo. But inside was rebirth. Workbenches lined the walls, gleaming with tools that whispered of new beginnings. In the corner, mismatched chairs circled a coffee table stacked with donated books. And at the heart of the space, 4 workstations, each with a half-built engine and a fresh set of blueprints. These weren't Fontaine engines. They were simpler, made to teach, to mend. A hand-lettered sign hung above the entrance. The workshop for hope, where hands mend machines and hearts. Luke stood at the threshold, scissors in hand, fancier than anything he'd ever owned. Beside him, Isabel wore sneakers Emma had chosen for her, and a cardigan instead of corporate armor. This is yours, she said quietly. He shook his head. Ours. Behind them stood their first students. Not investors, but people. A single father. A refugee. A retired mechanic rediscovering purpose. A mother seeking more than minimum wage. A teenager who once fixed a lawnmower and never stopped wondering if she could fix something bigger. Emma clutched her clipboard like a mission commander. You ready? Luke smiled. Let's do this. With a single snip, the ribbon fell. Applause swelled. The guests stepped inside, reverent, eyes wide with possibility. There were no desks, no lectures, just hands-on work, the kind that builds dignity as much as skill. Luke made his way through the room and stopped beside a nervous young man with broad shoulders. Ever work on an engine before? Not unless a weed trimmer counts, the man said. It counts, Luke replied, handing him a wrench. Feel that? That's not just weight. That's trust. It says, you can do this. Across the room, Emma gave an emphatic thumbs up. Isabel joined Luke, her expression full of quiet awe. You've created something beautiful. It's not just mine, he said. You gave it a name. She looked up at the sign. I remember when you didn't want the spotlight. Still don't, he said. But I'm learning there's a difference between hiding and honoring what matters. She met his gaze. And what matters most? You. Her. This. She smiled. Good answer. He chuckled, then pulled a small envelope from his back pocket. What's that? She asked. Found it in the old toolbox. I think it was meant for the version of me that never quit. Inside was Emma's first sticky note, the one that started it all. My dad made this. Please read it with your heart. Isabel touched it like a sacred text. She knew. Always, Luke said. She just waited for us to catch up. Emma skipped over, clipboard in hand. Okay, team. I've got name tags. She handed Luke one, head mechanic and hope builder. Isabel's Reed, CEO and co-everything officer. Luke laughed, wiping away a tear. She's going to run this whole place by the time she's 10. Isabel wrapped an arm around Emma. I'll be her assistant. Happily. They stepped deeper into the space. The whir of tools began. Sparks flew. Stories unfolded. And just as the sun crested the mountain, Luke reached up and flipped the switch on the workshop sign. The bulbs flickered, then glowed. La Lumiere. No longer just a car. A movement. A mission. A legacy. And for the first time, Luke Mitchell didn't feel like he'd come full circle. He felt like he'd finally arrived, right where the light had always been leading. Home.